Things are getting real in fantasy football. It's high stakes scenarios we find ourselves in. A buddy of mine, he's got some payments due, some important payments due, but it's all banking on the rest of the season and if CeeDee Lamb can bring him back to win a championship. That's me. I need CeeDee Lamb to come back. I'm 3-1. There's a good chance he's going to come back. We're going to get on the right path and float to a championship league. These are waiver wire ads. These are must ads. You need to be active on the waiver wire if you want to win your fantasy league. It's the way it goes every year. Number one most important thing into winning your fantasy league is your draft. You have to nail the draft. That way you have depth. If players go down like they always do, you have players who are supreme bench players that are better than other teams' bench players. It's hard to do, but you got to nail it. The second most important thing is you have to be active on the waiver wire. There's always a player like Bucky Irving. People already think this might be Woody Marks. It might be Woody Marks, but is it Ty J. Spears? We'll kind of get into that today. We're going to get into that. This is going to be the 10 must-add waiver wire players ranked. Some of these are not going to be must-add waiver wires. It's going to be a tier list. Let's get into it. Okay, so to kick this off, Woody Marks is going to be our number one player to add on the waiver wire this week. This comes from a blowout win versus a weak opponent in the Tennessee Titans, but ultimately what you have was a breakout game for Woody Marks. Nick Chubb, who we thought was the RB1 going into this game, had 13 carries, 47 yards, averaged 3.6 yards a carry. That's been a pretty typical Nick Chubb stat line this season. Hasn't been super efficient. Going into this game, this is a player who already kind of had the third down role. Now he's kind of carving into that early down role that Nick Chubb had, which could make him a sneaky league-winning kind of high potential waiver wire ad. He's not going to be available in a lot of leagues. You have to kind of be in a maybe 10-man, one flex league. If you're in an 8-man league, he's definitely there, but this is a guy. When we use the phrase Bucky Irving, this year's Bucky Irving, we can't say that lightly, and I'm not going to say that about Woody Marks, just because there is that kind of underlying thing with Joe Mixon. Will he come back? Will he not? Even if Joe Mixon does come back, I kind of just expect him to take over the Nick Chubb role in the offense, and Woody Marks will continue to do what he's doing. All right, coming in at number 2, we have Amari DiMercato, and I got to be completely honest with you. I cannot be on this platform telling you that Amari DiMercato is this must-start right away and going to be this breakout candidate. I assume that Amari DiMercato is going to be the RB1 in Arizona. If you're in a 14-man league where you need to start 2 flexes, Amari DiMercato is a league winner for you. That could be a potential, next 4 games, you have a genuine advantage at the flex. If you're picking up Amari DiMercato because you had James Conner and Trey Benson as the handcuff, and then Trey Benson got hurt, and now you're on your third handcuff, that's a little desperate. And who knows how good he will end up being. But I think that when you talk about a waiver wire, and let me just preface this with all of these players that are on the must-add waiver wire. Just being active and navigating the waiver wire in fantasy is a huge advantage. It's a huge advantage. If you want to win your league, you have to navigate the waiver wire. If you're moving on the waiver wire, if you're pivoting off players and looking at the opportunities that younger players get, or injuries happen like the scenario we're in here, maybe it's not DiMercato, maybe that's a miss, but in 2 weeks you can drop them for someone and maybe you swing big. There's always a player that breaks out on the waiver wire. In my league that I'm in, which we will get into more information about the league I'm in right now, it is crazy. The stuff that happens in this league is crazy. It's entertaining. Need to fill you in on it. Otherwise, I was able to pick up Quinshon Judkins. Things were looking a little shaky. They were saying he had some serious allegations going on. Charges were dropped. The character concerns, maybe if you take that into account into fantasy football, ultimately, that's not going to be a major factor. He's playing pretty good, it looks like, and it looks like it could be a steal of the waiver wire if your league mates didn't draft him. And actually, my league mate did draft him, and he dropped him. And I picked him back up, and that's just navigating the waiver wire. Stuff like this happens all the time. Regarding DeMarcado and his ability, this is a guy that we've seen before step in. There's actually a year where he was kind of that emerging running back in Arizona. Then James Conner comes into the fold, and they draft Trey Benson. It seems like DeMarcado was kind of the odd man out, but we've seen him with a lot of opportunity before, and maybe this is an opportunity to break out for the next 4 games. Or maybe it's more, depending on when Benson returns healthy. Okay, moving on to number 3, it's going to be the A tier. Tyjae Spears is an exciting player for a couple of reasons. Mainly, he is coming back from IR. The Titans are the worst team in the NFL. They are horrible. I mean, this is a bad team with a bad coach, with an offense that is really struggling to figure out what their identity is. They aren't very good at running the ball. They aren't very good at passing the ball. They aren't very good at competing. This is a team that could potentially host a fire seal at the deadline. They're taking calls from everybody. Howie Roseman, hi, can I, just absolutely finesse you in this deal for Calvin Ridley? Sure. Give me a conditional 7th round pick next year. These kind of things can happen. Tyjae Spears could be the RB1 if Tony Pollard is traded or if he's not. Tony Pollard has not been good this year. Let's get this straight. You hear the name Tony Pollard, that name carries weight. He's been fantasy relevant for around 5 years now. He was good in Dallas for a couple seasons there, had a big role, came to Tennessee on a decent contract, and has been a starting running back. Nothing more, nothing less. Tyjae Spears is younger with a little more upside to be something more. That's why you add him here. Maybe it's a split backfield. Maybe Tony Pollard's traded. Maybe he's not. Maybe Spears just has the bell cow role. That's the less likely option. But I still think a waiver claim on him, if you have somebody like Hunter Renfrow on your bench, I would much rather have Tyjae Spears on that spot. Number 4, still within the A tier, Kendre Miller. Now, this is a player I think is in a similar situation as Tyjae Spears. This is a younger player who has a decent prospect profile, is a decent athlete, good player, good potential. He's been on and off the field, really battled injuries. The Saints are the worst team in the NFL. They're up there. I mean, this is a horrible team. Bad offense, bad quarterback play. I mean, it's actually not that bad quarterback play, but it's just like, the offense is just not explosive at all. They don't have a lot of weapons. They have a lot of all right pieces. And Alvin Kamara, totally healthy this game, had 15 carries, and Kendre Miller had 11 carries. That's a split backfield. That's almost 50-50 carries. And, well, you might say, well, the Bills, they crushed the Saints. Look at the box score. This game was close. The whole game, and Kamara was never out because of an injury. The Saints were a touchdown away from being back in it in the fourth quarter, and they leaned on Kendre Miller in the running game. Is that to say that Kendre Miller and Alvin Kamara are both in a 50-50 committee backfield? That doesn't mean that. What it does mean is that this is a really bad team, and just like the Titans could look to sell at the deadline, Kamara is a trade suitor. You need a suitor. Kamara could possibly be traded at the deadline. Always with trades, you need a suitor. You hear about Kansas City, maybe Arizona. If Arizona gets Alvin Kamara, forget everything I said about DeMarcado previously. But even that would make Kendre Miller an intriguing option because he's obviously the premium handcuff for Kamara, there being injury. But there's potential for more with an increase in carries in a close game against a really good team. And the possibility that because the Saints are so bad, they trade Alvin Kamara. That's why you could maybe have an opportunity to pick him up. For example, I'd rather have a guy like Kendre Miller on my bench than Jalen Coker. I think Jalen Coker is a good young receiver, but I think it's a bad offense. I don't think there's going to be a lot of pass attempts coming from Bryce Young. With Kendre Miller, you have a guy who's going to get carries in run-heavy games, who could also just take over as the lead back once Kamara is traded, if he is. That's why I would like a guy like Kendre Miller as an option. And at number 5, we have Darren Waller. Now, tight end is a controversial position in fantasy in terms of the value and how your league mates value it. Likely in the draft, some of your league mates wanted to make it a priority to get a tight end, and they might have overdrafted one. Maybe Brock Bowers went in the second round. I was able to get Tyler Warren in the 7th round of my draft. I felt pretty good about that value. Now, some teams think it's the best option to stack up on running backs, receivers, maybe have a higher quarterback value, and wait to take a tight end in the last round. That could be a good strategy, but maybe you drafted Evan Ingram. And that's when it hurts. You really are just kind of struggling with the waiver wire. And I know at first, if you realized, man, I just drafted T.J. Hawkinson and Mark Andrews, those are 2 droppable tight ends. I'm going to be forced to start Jake Tungus next week. I wouldn't say that now. I think that you can look at a guy like Darren Waller. This is a guy who had 2 touchdowns last week. Tyreek Hill is now out for the year. That was a really gruesome injury. Pray and hope for his recovery to go well. Darren Waller is going to have to step up in this offense, be a contributor down the field, and I certainly think he looks like he still has a lot of athleticism, has a lot of juice left, does not look washed, at least yet. The Dolphins project to improve offensively than they were the first couple games, but then again, you lose Tyreek Hill, you lose a layer of the offense. You expect guys like Jalen Waddle, Darren Waller, and Achane to really step up as weapons for Tua. That's going to be all I have for you in this one. This was my 5 must-add waiver wire pickups. Some of them aren't really must-add. Some of them are, if you need any type of help at running back or receiver or wherever, pick this player up. I also just want to preface that this is a very realistic waiver wire must-add video. I don't expect a player like Alec Iomanner to be available, right? I just don't really expect that. There's a lot of good players that I feel that way about who I just don't assume are going to be there. Jordan Addison, he's probably not available in most leagues. That's why I'm not naming him. These are players that could be available, could maybe not be available, but it's something to look at. I just think it's super important to navigate the waiver wire in fantasy. Just doing that by itself will give you an advantage because you are constantly changing your team, looking at matchups. You will be on top of everybody else if you constantly are doing that. It's a race to make the smartest decisions you can, take the big swings when you see the opportunity to, hit it out the park. Good luck this week. After the Thursday night game tonight, there will be a video tomorrow with what the implications are of that Thursday night football game. See you guys next time.